Good one.
EA Sports.
So the early 2000s were a different time. Things like Tony Hawk really paved the way for a whole genre of arcadey, sports-based games, and one of those games was SSX. The original SSX came out really early on the PS2, and it's one of its first games. And it's basically about these dozen or so snowboarders, and they compete in the snowboarding supercross, which is like a large festival where they all are trying to be the best in the world. It was really well received and would soon be followed up by SSX Tricky. Tricky really became the defining game for the series, and it would become a huge success, leading to the third game, SSX 3.
3, 2, 1.
Now, SSX3 is one of my favorite games ever made. There's something very special about the way this game handles that I just really can't get enough of. The trick system is perfectly balanced, the physics feel right, it's floaty but in the best possible way. It isn't perfect, but there's so many things that make it very special. So the gist is that SSX3 is you pick a snowboarder, you go through peak 1, 2, and 3, and throughout each peak you complete races, do trick events, and other sort of mini games and that sort of thing. There's 4 main modes in the game. There's race, which is pretty self-explanatory, slopestyle, which is you're going through a track trying to get as many points as you can. I think the 2 best modes are obviously race and slopestyle, and then there's big air, which is large jumps in about a minute long tracks. And then there's Super Pipe, which are sort of like time attack freestyles. Super Pipe is a lame game mode, but I'll accept it. You could maybe skip Super Pipe. So basically, in each level, your goal is twofold. Complete the main objective and keep your Uber gauge up. And you do that by performing enough tricks to build up an Uber gauge, and then performing enough Uber tricks, which take longer to do, to fill up the full Uber letters. You get Uber, and then you get Super Uber, and then when that's filled out, you go really fast, and you go really high, and you do good tricks, and they get lots of points. I think it's really smart how the system works for both racing and trick modes, where you want to build that Uber up and you want to keep it up so you go as fast as possible, but you also want to build that Uber up so you get as many points as possible. It's a great system. The physics really facilitate the way that you can get great air. Everything feels deliberate, and while there can be jank at points, when you get the best run, you get a platinum medal, it's like, I'm the best ever. Really makes you feel like Batman. I think SSX3 is the kind of thing where you want to play it and you want to feel cool, and everything is facilitating that feeling. They want you to feel like you're moving so fast and like everything is in your control. But you have to get there. It's really easy to just completely stumble all over the place, like fall over 10 times in a row and completely whiff a track. It's got probably one of my favorite flow states in any game. You get this feeling of just a perfectly paced movement where you're going through jumps, you're landing on rails, you're adjusting, you're making these micro decisions about where you're falling, and it's just so satisfying. It's sort of like talking about F-Zero or something. It's like you can't really explain why it feels good without getting good enough to feel good at it. And I'm not saying like get good or whatever, I'm just I'm just saying some games have a skill floor. While getting through the game isn't actually too complicated, getting those platinum medals are, in my opinion, quite difficult. Here's the thing, I'm making a distinction between something being special to me and something being objectively perfect. Like, this game is like a top 10er for me, but for most people it probably is just another game. It has flaws. The character models these days look a little funky, and there are definitely some points with a lot of jank. Sometimes a jump just feels like it doesn't make sense why you landed in a certain way. And if you're not willing to put yourself into this weird snowboarding obsessed world, you kind of get some cringy dialogue and some weird sort of things like that. I cannot de-emphasize the amount of jank that you do have to put up with if you really play this game a lot. But like I said, the things that make it special really overcome those obstacles. Tricky had a very straightforward race system. SSX3 implements the world map. It's sort of open world, but not really, because you can just transport yourself directly to every event. Because of the open world structure, you really do get to know the three peaks well.
Here's some mountain info for those of you out riding today. Reports in from Peak 1's high alpine state that avalanche conditions have moved into the extreme. Riders are requested to use caution when venturing out into the backcountry.
Peak 1 is a lot of fun beginner level tracks. Snow Jam is a bit basic, but it's a great first level. Metro City is by far the best track, maybe in the game. It's a great race course with lots of fun railing and shortcuts to take, and it's all set in this nighttime city.
Peak 2 is experiencing the beginnings of storm-like conditions. Reports are coming in of strong winds throwing riders around and apparently beating up on some of the trees up there too. Watch yourselves, people.
Peak 2 is where they elevated a little bit. You've got a lot more interesting track layouts, there's a good amount of content, and I feel like the races have some really good set pieces. I think Ruthless Ridge is a really fun map with a lot of really cool jumps and sections. I love when the plane flies over you. A lot of spectacle in this one. Intimidator is my personal favorite course in the game. I love this color scheme that it's got with the sort of gloomy weather and just a little village area and stuff like that. The super pipe here is more of the same, but at least there's some extra features like the half pipes on the sides. I don't know if I'm the only one who didn't know that you could grab lips or like grind rails for a long time. Peak 2's slope style is called Style Mile, and it might be my favorite in the game. It's got a really good balance of jumps and grind areas, and I just like how it looks. So basically, Peak 1 is the beginner maps with a few little things to get in your way, but it's pretty easy to get through. Peak 2 ups the difficulty a little bit, but adds more interesting layouts and dynamic level structures. But then there's Peak 3, and Peak 3 is out to kill you.
Just got off the phone with Peak 3 Ski Patrol. Sounds a bit dangerous up there. There's been a few sightings of crevices and big ice chunks breaking away. That's never good. You better be prepared.
Peak 3 has a lot of bottomless pits. It has a lot of moving track parts. It has a lot of things that will fall or break, like ice bridges and that sort of thing. But when you get good at a track in Peak 3, you feel like you're owning it. Peak 3's Gravitude racetrack is a lot of fun, and it has a lot of really cool areas with all the destroyed aircrafts and that sort of thing. Actually, Peak 3 has the best bigger event. It's got the most visual spectacle to it and a lot of really cool areas that you can get up to if you know what you're doing. I think my favorite would be Peak 2. I feel like it has the most interesting parts. I do feel like Peak 3 has cut content. It has less races and less just in general stuff to do. But the races in Peak 3 are right. And of course, you can't forget the all peak race. What a cool feature that you can just like play through the entire mountain top to bottom. I love that, and it's a great way to wrap up a playthrough of the game. A big part of this game was the backcountry aspect, and while it does sort of, 20 years later boil down to an extra track that's just set in the wilderness, I do feel like some of those moments are really great. I love the way that certain areas will have you almost feel like you're just falling down this mountain doing tricks, and you're trying to squeeze in tricks as you go down to build up that boost meter. But there's really one aspect to SSX3 that binds the whole Conquer the Mountain game mode together, and that's got to be DJ Atomica and Radio Big.
This competitive spotlight is on Kaori Nishidaki. If you don't know who Kaori is, pull your head out of the snowbank, okay? Stylish from her boots all the way up to her always funky hair, Kaori has become the ultimate celebrity in Japan. It's not hard to figure out why. Check out her riding, and you'll see what I mean.
So DJ Atomica is this fictional DJ who plays all the music for you, and he sort of commentates as you're going through the levels.
Welcome back to Radio Big.
The sense of place that the game gives me with the DJ is really well done, and it reminds me of even modern games like Forza Horizon. He'll react to what you're doing, he'll mention when you do well in a course, he'll talk about what course you're leading to. It tracks if you're heading down the hill to another area, it'll explain what's going on. He'll introduce music that he's playing. It's so natural, and it adds so much to the atmosphere of SSX3.
Hey, I'm Mike from MXPX, and I'm going big on EA Radio Big.
Like so many games in this genre, the music is so important, but I don't know if I could play it for you. Just go look it up. EA Big did such a great job with DJ Atomica, and he is a reflection of the energy of that time. It's all this post-Y2K coolness, it's all about it. And he really just makes you more excited to play more of the game.
Do yourself a favor and check it out.
So one thing that I think kind of goes unmentioned in game design is the little details. I think you can take a good game and make it really special by adding small things that make you just feel a little better as you play the game. And I feel like SSX3 is full of these little details, and here's just a list of neat things that I like. You can touch a rail by just adjusting your board slightly. So if you're about to miss a rail, you can spin yourself with the trick system to just barely land on it and connect to the rail. And speaking of rails, you can grind upside down. It barely ever helps, but it's cool. The stats go up to 11. I love the little cheer you do after you hit a big jump or do a big trick. And the feeling you get when you boost off of a rail is like firing out of a cannon, and it's so satisfying every time. Oh, and another little detail that I love is the little character animations in all of the transport cutscenes. Kaori will do this little peace sign thing, or Zoe will be doing push-ups or whatever. It's just really fun. Hey, if you like this video so far, it would be really cool if you subscribed. I'd like to make more stuff like this, and I appreciate you watching. So I really feel like SSX3 is just the kind of game that we might never see ever again. I find the control layout has a weirdly high skill floor. It can be sort of confusing to get used to, the little intricacies. It feels very manual. It feels like there's not a lot of things to help you. You can get absolutely dumpstered in a run, and it doesn't feel good. And also the art and design and the humor, it's pretty of the time.
Did you boys miss me? Whatever.
Oh yeah, I dig this flavor.
If they remade SSX3, I feel like I couldn't be completely satisfied. There's no way that it would be exactly the way it is to me, and probably a lot of other people who grew up with it. But that's okay. I think that's just how it's going to be. I'm perfectly happy playing this game, probably forever. It's so hard to explain the way that this game feels when you get good at it. And I'm not even that good at it. Some people do these insane trick combos that last the entire track, and they get millions of points. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know how they're doing it. But even at the level that I'm at, it's so much fun.
Hey, Calvin! Why don't you get your butt on over to the backcountry so I can kick it large?
So another small aspect I want to talk about is like customization. I am like a sucker for customization in games. I love unlocking little hats. I love unlocking little color schemes. I love messing around with my characters, and SSX3 really lets you go nuts. Every peak has a shop, and then every race that you complete with a gold medal gives you stuff. So I always love seeing what new equipment each character gets, because they all have unique equipment. I know there's like almost set combos, but it's fun to mix and match. Is that lame? I love it. Speaking of customization, I know that you can get really silly costumes, like you can be a cow, you can have like flaming arms or like a pumpkin head. I was never like super into that stuff. I know there's some people who love that sort of thing. So in terms of playing the game right now, I'd say there's two best ways to do it. The first best way is through Dolphin. You can play the GameCube version, mess with the settings, get it running on an Xbox controller, and I find it plays perfectly. I've been using this HD texture pack throughout most of the video. It's really well made. It's not perfect, but you can run the game at full 60 frames, so it's great. Of course, I forgot to mention, obviously playing all of these games on original hardware is perfectly fine, and it works just well on PS2, Xbox, and GameCube. The other best way to play the game, I would say, is on Series X. EA and Microsoft put the game out for backwards compatibility a few years ago. So if you have the original copy of SSX on Xbox, which you can get for $15 Canadian on average, you can play the whole game on your Series X, and it runs perfectly. My only issue is that the controls on Xbox are a little funny. They take some getting used to. I would say they're objectively worse than the GameCube version, but you really can't go wrong with either version of SSX3. So this game to me is almost endlessly replayable. I probably go through all 3 peaks at least once a year. It's just that satisfying. I want to know what you guys think about SSX3. Are you more of a tricky guy? Because I know that's like a big sort of half debate. You're wrong if you prefer tricky. Sorry.